Jane Clark Scharl. Welcome to Bookish Questions with Cultural Debris.
Thanks.
You are the author of a new-ish book, Sonnez Les Matines, a play. So it has a very unusual premise, I think, from what most of us would consider a usual premise. Tell us a little bit about your unusual premise and unusual characters in your play.
Sure. So it's got two characters that most people are pretty familiar with. John Calvin, the founder of Calvinism, and Ignatius of Loyola, St. Ignatius, who went on to found the Jesuits. But then it has this third character named Francois Rabelais, who's a French humanist novelist who lived at the same time as the other two. And I learned while I was in Paris, I learned that there was a period where Calvin and Ignatius were both studying at the same college at the University of Paris. And then Rabelais was likely in Paris at the same time. And I just thought that was so interesting to have all three of these men in Paris at the same time early in their lives before they'd become famous. So I thought, well, what if the three of them happened to meet? What would happen? And it turns out that if they happen to meet, there's murder and mayhem in the streets of Paris for Mardi Gras. So that's the story of this play, is the three of them getting mixed up in a murder, and they each have, they share some responsibility for the death. And they have to work through that guilt, before Lent begins.
Well, I mean, that is one of those, I don't know, sort of historical happenstances, I guess. So we look back, and it would have meant nothing to them at the time, of course, but for us now, we're looking back, and so it's like a Doctor Who episode. Almost.
It kind of is. It's a good description.
Yeah, what happens if we get them here and somebody dies? In the play, or the play is presented to us in an unusual way for a modern play to be written, and that is in verse.
Yes.
So the entire play is written in verse. This was a very common approach, the traditional approach to writing plays in days gone by, but not something that we see very commonly now, or certainly as commonly now. Why did you choose that method to bring forth this play?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the best answer is just that's how I write. I write verse. I'm trained as a poet. That's what I mostly write. And the whole play is in formal verse, which I think is really helpful when you're working with ideas like this, because it's really a play of ideas. It's three very intelligent men, all of whom are philosophers in their own way, and having each of them speak in verse made me be very disciplined about how those ideas worked. Because you couldn't have someone just stand up and get on a soapbox, because when they were speaking, it had to adhere to certain rules. I don't think I could have written it in prose. I think it would have become very stolid. But the verse kept it light and kept it moving. And it also made it funny. It introduced these jokes and these rhymes that I never would have come across except in verse.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, of course, we're all familiar with Shakespeare, and his plays are in verse, and are also studded with puns throughout, and witticisms and so forth. So do you find then that verse lends itself to that more readily than prose does?
Oh, for me it does, certainly, because it's kind of a classic, when little children play games, you hear, your 5, 6, 7-year-old playing with each other, and they have all these rules in their games, these like meticulous legal universes that they've built before they can play the game. And that's because it's more fun. Mm-hmm. It's because when you create this almost artificial situation, that's when the real dynamics and tensions start to come out. And I think that's what happens with language too. Almost the more intensely you put the pressure on the language, then the language starts to push back against you, and you find out it becomes a partnership. At least for me, it becomes a partnership between the language and me. It's not just me pushing the language around. It's us working together to say something that I previously had not even thought before.
Yeah, it gives you, I guess, guardrails that keep you, and not only keep you contained, I guess, but forces you into areas that you might not voluntarily go. But
For sure. Yep.
but now you have to.
Especially rhyme. I know a lot of people make fun of rhyme, but rhyme does that so well, because you use a word and you think it's great, and then you realize, oh, the only things that rhyme with it are ridiculous. And you have to start asking yourself, is this a ridiculous idea, a ridiculous sentence or image? Like, maybe I thought it was serious, but maybe deep down inside it's actually silly, because the sounds, they're telling you something. And it's just an interesting process.
So I understand that you have even more works coming out in 2024. What can you share with us about those? What do we have to look forward to?
I've got 2 books coming out, hopefully. I definitely have one coming out in April. It's a collection of poetry. It's called Pawns, and it's coming out. Whip and Stock has the Poema series edited by D.S. Martin. He very generously is publishing my collection. So that'll be out in April. And then hopefully the second in this Rabelais trilogy of verse plays will be out late next year. It is currently giving me some trouble, so we'll see what happens.
The language is pushing back already. So,
well, I actually over the weekend figured out something it was pushing me to do, and I have to rewrite. I'm 2/3 of the way done. I'm gonna have to rewrite probably a good 30% of it, but it's okay. I figured out something that I didn't know about one of the characters, and it's gonna really help. But we'll see. I'm hoping I can get that one done on time.
All right. So this is the first of a trilogy then. So we have more works. It's it's like a New Hope being released in Star Wars. So
yes. The second one is called The Death of Rabelais. So very much an Empire Strikes Back. This is gloomy stuff.
Very good. Well, I like it.
Good,
so where can people find you and your works online? Where can they track you down?
Sure. I've got a website, JC Sharl, and the spelling on that is awful. It's SCHARL .com, jcsharl.com. And then I'm on Twitter. I actually really like Twitter. So if anyone's on Twitter, DM me, and I enjoy it. I like keeping up with people that way. So it's a great way to get in touch.
Twitter sometimes gets a bad rap.
Yeah. If you mute almost everything, then it's great.
That's right. It's all about who you don't listen to. Make sure you don't listen to people. And,
exactly.
I have also found here's my Twitter tip for people. A lot of times accounts will become a lot more tolerable if you will disable retweets on their accounts.
That's interesting.
I have found that there are some people who I actually like what they have to say, but they get political in a way I'm uninterested in through retweets.
Sure.
And so if I disable their retweets, then I enjoy them so much more.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So that's a little Twitter tip embedded in our interview.
That's good.
And I believe you were going to share something with us on the way out.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you kind of as a little treat, something from the manuscript that I have coming out.
Ooh, very nice.
This is from Pawns. It's quite short, so I'll just give you this as a little closing note. This is called Daybreak in Bretagne. And you can tell I have a obsession with France because this play is set in France. Now I'm reading a French poem. I didn't even think of that. Daybreak in Bretagne. None now of that sheer gold of sunset, decadent, the clarity of last light on scarlet poppies. Now mist rides the muted fields like breath, going out and at once returning, the dew neither gathers itself nor dissipates. The world herself is an aging nun, veiled in gray, but for the cool luminance of her quiet face.
Very nice. Jane Clark Scharl. The book is, if I can grab it here, from Wise Blood Books, correct? Yes, Wise Blood Books,
Yes.
where you can order it from them, and I think also on Amazon, where all books come from. Sonnez Les Matines, and it is a play, and it is it's like almost like a verse Doctor Who episode, and Star Wars.
I'm going to use this description from now on.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Alan.